What if the past you tried so hard to bury resurfaced in the most shocking way imaginable, threatening to unravel your perfectly constructed new life? Ethan adjusted his tie in the reflection of the upscale restaurant's polished window. Tonight's dinner was special, a carefully orchestrated opportunity to show Sarah, his girlfriend, just how much he valued their relationship. With a practiced smile, he walked towards their reserved table, meeting Sarah's radiant gaze across the softly lit room. She looked stunning in her sapphire blue dress. The restaurant, bathed in warm light and adorned with elegant decor, exuded exclusivity. Ethan settled into his seat, offering a smooth compliment as the sommelier poured an expensive bottle of wine. Everything felt perfect, as if life was finally clicking into place after months of uncertainty following his divorce. Sarah was the epitome of his new beginning. Sophisticated, serene, and seemingly untouched by the chaos of his past. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by easy laughter and knowing glances. Then, in an instant, everything shattered. Ethan looked up to flag down a waiter, and his eyes froze on a sight that turned his blood to ice. Standing just a few feet away was Amelia, his ex-wife. She was wearing a server's uniform, an apron barely concealing her distinctly round, pregnant belly. She was pregnant. A wave of nausea washed over Ethan. He couldn't help but wonder how she had ended up here. He remembered that after their divorce, Amelia had flatly refused any financial assistance, insisting she wanted to rebuild her life independently. But seeing her working, pregnant, in a place like this, ignited a searing pang of guilt within him. The air in the opulent dining room suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. Ethan felt his heart pound against his ribs, his hands clenching tightly under the table. What was she doing here? And why was she waiting tables in a place like this? But even more chillingly, whose child was she carrying? Sarah, completely oblivious to the emotional tempest brewing within Ethan, continued talking until she finally noticed his fixed, distant gaze. "Is everything all right, love?" she asked, her tone laced with concern, following the direction of his horrified stare. Amelia, sensing the sudden attention, quickly turned and vanished through a side door. Ethan, speechless, could only murmur something unintelligible. His mind was miles away, struggling to process the scene he had just witnessed. For the 8 months since their divorce, he had done everything possible to leave the past behind, meticulously building a life that excluded Amelia. Yet, seeing her pregnant, he couldn't help but wonder if it had happened during the final days of their marriage or shortly after. The dates didn't quite fit, and that uncertainty added a new layer of confusion to his already racing thoughts. "Do you know her?" Sarah pressed, growing more intrigued. Ethan shook his head, but his denial lacked any conviction. Sarah frowned, but didn't push further, resuming the conversation while Ethan made a strained effort to appear normal. However, his mind was trapped in a whirlwind of unanswered questions. As Sarah talked about her weekend plans, Ethan couldn't help but recall the final days of his marriage to Amelia. They had been difficult months, marked by constant arguments and an irreparable distance. She had pleaded for emotional support, but he, consumed by his work and ambition, had chosen to ignore her needs. When they finally signed the divorce papers, Ethan convinced himself it had been for the best. Now, confronting this image of a pregnant Amelia, unearthed buried guilt and doubts he desperately wished to avoid. The night dragged on, but Ethan barely touched his food. While Sarah spoke, he kept stealing furtive glances towards the side door where Amelia had disappeared, half expecting, half dreading to see her return. She never did. At the end of dinner, Sarah excused herself to use the restroom, leaving him alone at the table. Ethan seized the moment, calling over the nearest waiter. "Excuse me, could you tell me the name of the server who was attending this section earlier?" he asked, trying to sound casual. The waiter looked confused. "Amelia? I think her shift just ended." "I'm not sure, but she's been working here for a few months." The name confirmed what he already knew, but hearing someone else say it sent a fresh wave of nausea through him. Amelia was working there, and had been for months, while he hadn't even given a thought to how she was faring after the divorce. Now, with the information he had, Ethan couldn't ignore what he'd seen. The image of Amelia, pregnant and working in that place, burned itself into his mind as a constant reminder of something he hadn't faced. When Sarah returned to the table, Ethan had regained some of his composure, but his mind remained trapped in a torrent of thoughts. They left the restaurant together, and though Ethan tried to keep the conversation light, Sarah noticed his distraction. "Are you sure everything's okay?" she asked as they got into the car. "Yeah, just tired," he replied, avoiding her gaze. That night, as Sarah slept peacefully in her bed, Ethan lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling. Amelia's face, her swollen belly, and the way she had avoided his eyes wouldn't leave him alone. For the first time in months, he realized that the past he had tried so hard to leave behind was about to return with more force than he ever imagined. What hidden regrets truly haunt us, waiting for a moment of truth to shatter the illusion of a perfect new beginning. Ethan woke the next day with an unshakable feeling of unease. He'd spent hours tossing and turning, caught in a tangle of memories that time had failed to erase. As he sipped his coffee in the kitchen, with Sarah still asleep, his mind returned again and again to Amelia's image, working in that restaurant, visibly pregnant. There was something profoundly disturbing about seeing her like that, as if her unexpected appearance had reopened a wound he thought was long healed. He remembered the early years of his relationship with Amelia. They had been young, full of dreams and boundless hope. Amelia was a passionate woman, with an energy that lit up any room. She had supported him unconditionally as he built his business empire, sacrificing many of her own ambitions to be his rock. But over time, Ethan began to change. Work became his sole priority, and long nights at the office became the norm. Romantic dinners were replaced by business meetings, and shared weekends turned into hours glued to his phone and email. The distance between them didn't appear suddenly, but like a hairline crack that slowly widened. Amelia tried to talk to him, explaining how she felt ignored, how she needed his emotional support as much as he needed hers professionally. But Ethan always had an excuse. "It's for our future. I just need to close this deal. Soon we'll have more time." Each broken promise was another brick in the wall separating them. The memory of their last argument still haunted him. Amelia had cried, pleading with him to listen, to understand how much she was losing by focusing only on his career. Ethan, frustrated and exhausted, had coldly replied, "If this isn't enough for you, then maybe we should just end it." He hadn't expected her to take him seriously, but the next day, Amelia had packed her bags and left. It was then he understood he had lost her. Returning to the present, Ethan wondered how they had reached this point. Amelia, a woman who had once been his partner and confidant, was now just a shadow of the past he had tried to forget. But seeing her pregnant changed everything. Was that child his? So why hadn't she told him? And if not, who was the father? Guilt began to gnaw at him. He had dedicated the past months to building a new life with Sarah, someone who represented stability and simplicity. But now, he couldn't ignore that he had left a chapter of his life unfinished. He wondered if he had been selfish in taking for granted that Amelia would be fine after the divorce, in assuming she could move on as he had. Ethan knew he couldn't stand idly by. There were too many unanswered questions, too many things he needed to understand. Though a part of him feared confronting the past, another part knew he wouldn't find peace until he did. As he looked out the window, Amelia's face returned to his mind. And with it, a decision began to form. He needed to know the truth even if it hurt. Can a desperate heart find the courage to face a past it shattered, even when the truth promises to be devastating? Ethan couldn't get Amelia out of his head. Days turned into a week, but the image of his pregnant ex-wife, working as a waitress, haunted him relentlessly. At the office, as he reviewed contracts and attended meetings, his mind drifted back to the past, to what he'd left unresolved. At night, when Sarah tried to talk, he'd respond in monosyllables, distant. There was something about that unexpected encounter that had utterly destabilized him, a nagging sense of obligation he couldn't ignore. Finally, his gnawing curiosity overpowered his reluctance. He decided to go back to the restaurant where he'd seen her, this time alone. he said nothing to Sarah. He wasn't ready to explain the turmoil stirring within him. He arrived early, before the dinner rush, and asked for a table with a view of the entrance. Pretending to be engrossed in his phone, he kept his eyes fixed on the staff moving in and out of the kitchen. After a few tense minutes, he saw her. Amelia was there, carrying a tray with the same serene expression she'd always had, though now her eyes held a weariness Ethan didn't remember. Her pregnancy was undeniable. Even though her uniform tried to conceal it, her bulging belly spoke for itself. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He didn't know how to approach her, what to say after so long. Yet, he knew he couldn't leave without answers. He waited patiently until Amelia approached a nearby table. Feigning casualness, he called out to her. "Amelia," he said in a soft but firm tone. She froze for a moment, as if she'd seen a ghost. Slowly, she turned towards him, her eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and discomfort. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice strained. "I wanted to see you," he replied, cutting straight to the chase. "We need to talk." Amelia looked at him with disbelief, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I'm working," she snapped, turning to walk away. But Ethan wasn't willing to let the conversation end like that. "Please," he insisted. "Just 5 minutes. Not here. After your shift. I promise it won't be more than that." Amelia stared at him, weighing his words. There was something in his expression that made her hesitate. Finally, she sighed as if reluctantly giving in. "I get off at 10, she said, before walking away to continue her work. The hours crawled by for Ethan as he waited in his car, parked across from the restaurant. When the clock struck 10, he saw Amelia emerge from the back door, wrapped in a light coat. He quickly approached her, his heart pounding. "Thanks for coming," he said sincerely. Amelia looked at him with a mix of exhaustion and resignation. "I don't know what you expect from this conversation, Ethan," she said, "but I don't have time for games. I just want answers," he responded. "I need to know how we got to this point, and if the baby is mine." His last phrase came out almost as a whisper, but it was enough to make Amelia's eyes harden. "Then you'd better listen closely," she said, crossing her arms, "because I'm not going to repeat myself. What happens when the truth you've spent years avoiding slams into your life, demanding not just recognition, but a commitment you never planned for?" Amelia stared at him intently, her expression a mix of exhaustion and steely resolve. Ethan, standing before her, felt the weight of her gaze. She wasn't the same woman he had known. There was something different about her, something time and circumstances had changed. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm as he waited for her to speak. "The baby is yours, Ethan," she finally stated, blunt and direct. Her voice was firm, as if she were tired of carrying the secret alone. "But don't expect that to mean anything more. I'm doing fine on my own, and I don't need anything from you." The impact of her words hit Ethan like a blast of icy air. He had considered the possibility, but hearing it directly from Amelia made the reality feel more tangible, more inescapable. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" His tone wasn't accusatory, but filled with confusion and a hint of pain. "We had a right to know, Amelia. I had a right to know." She laughed, but it wasn't a joyful sound. It was bitter, laden with frustration. "A right? What are you talking about, Ethan? When I needed you, you were never there. And now you think you have a right to something." She paused, her eyes narrowing. "I didn't come looking for you because I knew you couldn't give me anything but excuses. I made the decision to move forward without you, because that was best for me and for this baby." Ethan felt Amelia's words pierce through every layer of self-defense he had built. He knew she was right, in a way. He had chosen his work, his ambition, over her again and again. But the fact that she had made such a life-altering decision without including him made him feel even more isolated from what had once been his life. "Amelia, I know I made mistakes," he said, forcing himself to maintain a calm tone. "I know I failed as a husband, but this baby is different. He's my child too. I want to be a part of his life, even if it's late." She watched him in silence for a moment, as if evaluating the sincerity of his words. Finally, she sighed and looked away. I don't know if I can trust you, Ethan. Not after everything that happened. I've learned to manage on my own, and I don't want this baby to go through what I went through with you. Let me prove to you that I've changed, Ethan insisted. I'm not saying it'll be easy, but I want to try. For the baby. For us, even if we don't get back together. Amelia shook her head, still reluctant to yield. I don't know if I can believe you, she said softly, but I also can't deny my child the chance to know his father. However, Ethan, this doesn't mean I'm giving you a second chance. If you want to be involved, you'll have to earn it. Ethan nodded, accepting her challenge. He had a lot to prove both to Amelia and to himself. But at that moment, under the dim streetlights, he felt that perhaps this was the beginning of something new, something he couldn't afford to ruin. What happens when the truth you've finally embraced forces you to dismantle the very life you meticulously built, leaving a trail of shattered expectations? The next day, Ethan returned home, his mind a whirlwind. The conversation with Amelia still echoed in his head, every word laden with reproaches and uncomfortable truths. He knew she was right. He had failed her as a husband, and now he had to prove he wouldn't make the same mistakes as a father. But as he tried to process everything, he also knew there was something else he had to face. Sarah. Sarah greeted him with her usual warm smile, preparing coffee in the kitchen, oblivious to the thoughts tormenting Ethan. You're home early today, she commented softly, pouring the liquid into 2 mugs. How was your day? Ethan hesitated for a moment before answering. He'd been avoiding this conversation, but he knew he couldn't hide the truth from her much longer. Sarah wasn't foolish, and his growing distraction hadn't gone unnoticed. We need to talk, he finally said, his voice serious. Sarah put the mug down on the counter, turning to look at him. Her smile vanished as she saw the expression on Ethan's face. What's wrong? She asked, worried. He took a breath, trying to gather his thoughts. Yesterday, when we were at the restaurant, I saw someone, Amelia. The mention of his ex-wife made Sarah frown. She knew about the divorce, but Ethan had rarely spoken of Amelia, as if she were a closed and filed chapter in his life. And? She asked cautiously. She was working there and she's pregnant. Ethan continued, his voice strained. Sarah, the baby is mine. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Sarah stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief and confusion. She seemed to process his words slowly, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. Are you saying your ex-wife is pregnant? With your child? And you're just finding out now? Yes, Ethan replied, feeling the full weight of the situation. She told me last night. I had no idea, Sarah. I didn't know anything until I saw her. Sarah took a step back, crossing her arms over her chest. She had spent months building a relationship with Ethan, trusting that he had left his past behind. Now everything she thought she knew about him was crumbling. And what does this mean for us? She asked, her voice heavy with emotion. What are you going to do now? I want to be part of my son's life, Ethan said firmly. I can't ignore this, Sarah. It's my responsibility. She looked at him with a mix of disappointment and pain. And what about us? Where do I fit into all of this? Or does everything now revolve around Amelia and that baby? Sarah, this has nothing to do with how I feel about you, he tried to explain. But I can't turn my back on my child. I hope you can understand that. Sarah shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. I don't know if I can, Ethan. I don't know if I can be a part of this. Sarah paused, her gaze reflecting an internal struggle. I need time to think. This isn't what I expected from our relationship. Without waiting for his response, she left the room, leaving Ethan alone with his growing sense of loss. He knew his decision would have consequences, but he never imagined they could cost him so much. Ethan stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the door through which Sarah had exited. The house, which normally felt warm and welcoming, now seemed cold and silent. Sarah's reaction had been a blow he wasn't prepared for, but he couldn't blame her either. He himself could barely process everything that was happening, and he knew it wouldn't be easy for her to accept the implications of his decision. The next day, as he drove to the office, Ethan couldn't help but wonder if he was making the right choices. On one hand, his responsibility to Amelia and the baby was undeniable. It was his child, and he couldn't allow himself to be the absent father he had always feared becoming. But on the other hand, there was Sarah, the woman with whom he had begun to build a new life, a life that now seemed in danger of falling apart. During a break in his workday, Ethan locked himself in his office and allowed himself a moment to reflect. He pulled out his phone and, almost without thinking, dialed Amelia's number. The call was brief. He wanted to make sure they could talk later, at a time when both of them would be calmer. Amelia agreed, though with a hint of wariness in her voice. That night, Ethan returned to the restaurant where Amelia worked, this time determined to speak with her more clearly. Amelia met him outside the establishment, with the same tired expression she'd worn since their first encounter. "What do you want, Ethan?" she asked, crossing her arms as if preparing for a confrontation. "I don't want to fight," he said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I just want to talk about the baby, about how we can handle this together." Amelia sighed and nodded, though her stance remained defensive. "All right, talk." Ethan took a deep breath before beginning. "I know I failed you before, Amelia. I know I stopped being the man you needed, and I'm sorry, but this baby is my chance to make it right, to prove that I can be a better man, a better father. I don't want you to do this alone." She looked at him for a long moment, evaluating his words. Finally, she spoke. "And how do you plan to do that, Ethan? Because it's not just about saying you want to help. It's about being there, being consistent, not disappearing when things get tough. I'm not going to put this baby in an unstable situation." "I know," he replied with a sincerity that seemed to surprise her. "And I want to show you that I'm committed. I'm not asking you to trust me immediately, but give me the chance to earn your trust." Amelia watched him, still hesitating, but something in Ethan's determination seemed different. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but this doesn't change anything between us, Ethan. My priority is this baby. If you really want to be involved, you'll have to prove it." As Ethan drove home that night, he felt a mix of relief and anxiety. He had taken an important step, but he knew the hardest part was yet to come. He would have to balance his responsibilities with Amelia and the baby while trying to save what was left of his relationship with Sarah. His life, once so perfectly controlled, was now a chaos he had to face with determination. What unspoken vows can be broken and new commitments forged when a man chooses to face his past and embrace a future he never envisioned? The days that followed were thick with tension. Ethan, accustomed to having control over every aspect of his life, now felt like he was walking a tightrope. On one hand, there was the commitment he'd made to Amelia and the baby. On the other, his relationship with Sarah seemed to crumble further with each conversation. She had grown distant, spending more time out of the house and limiting any meaningful exchanges to the bare minimum. Ethan knew he had to confront that situation, but every time he tried to talk to her, the conversations ended in tense arguments. Sarah was hurt, and Ethan understood why. But despite everything, his priority remained Amelia and the baby. Ethan decided to focus on what he could do. He knew he wouldn't win Amelia's trust with words alone, so he set out to show her he was serious. One afternoon, after finishing work, he stopped by a baby store. He had no idea what he was looking for, but he walked the aisles with determined purpose. After a quick call to his assistant for advice, he ended up buying a crib, clothes, diapers, and a few toys. That night, he loaded his car with the packages and drove to Amelia's small apartment. As he climbed the stairs, bags in hand, he felt a strange nervousness, like he was about to face a crucial job interview. He knocked on the door and waited. Amelia opened it with an expression of surprise that quickly turned to caution when she saw Ethan laden with packages. "What are you doing?" she asked, crossing her arms. "I brought some things for the baby," he replied, showing her the bags. "I know it's still a while off, but I thought maybe we could start getting ready. I want to help, Amelia." She looked at him for a few seconds that stretched into an eternity, trying to decipher his intentions. Finally, She stepped aside to let him in. Ethan placed the bags in a corner of the small living room and looked around. The place was modest but clean and welcoming. There were clear signs that Amelia was doing her best with what she had. "It's a lot," she finally said, looking at the bags with a mix of gratitude and distrust. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," Ethan responded sincerely, "but I want to. I can't change what happened between us, Amelia, but I can be here now for you and for the baby." Amelia sighed and sank onto the sofa, her gaze softening slightly. "This doesn't change anything, Ethan. It doesn't mean I fully trust you, but thank you. This will help a lot." Ethan nodded, accepting her response without trying to force anything more. He knew earning her trust would be a slow process, and he was willing to wait. A few minutes passed in uncomfortable silence before Ethan decided to leave. "If you need anything at all, call me. No matter the time." Amelia walked him to the door. Before he left, she looked at him with a faint smile. "Thank you, Ethan. Really." As he drove back home, Ethan felt a spark of hope. There was a lot to repair, but at least he had taken the first step. Though his life was still chaotic, that night he allowed himself to believe he was on the right path. Ethan began to get more involved in Amelia's life and the preparations for the baby's arrival. Although she maintained a certain emotional distance, she didn't refuse his help. He spent several afternoons with her, assembling the crib he had bought, organizing the tiny baby clothes, and making sure she lacked nothing. Every gesture, every shared moment, was Ethan's attempt to prove that this time he was truly committed. However, his relationship with Sarah continued to deteriorate. She barely spoke to him and spent nights away, staying at a friend's house. Ethan knew he had to face that situation, but every time he tried to talk to her, the conversations ended in tense arguments. Sarah was hurt, and Ethan understood why. But, despite everything, his priority remained Amelia and the baby. One afternoon, while helping Amelia organize the last details in the apartment, she watched him silently from the sofa. Ethan, focused on installing a small mobile above the crib, didn't notice Amelia's gaze at first. When he finished, he turned to her and saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen in a long time. A mix of gratitude and perhaps a hint of respect. "You've changed," Amelia said suddenly, breaking the silence. Ethan was surprised by her words. "You think so?" he asked, with a small flicker of hope in his voice. Amelia nodded, crossing her arms. "I don't know if you're the same man I married, but I do know that this Ethan is trying, and that means a lot." He sat beside her, taking a moment to absorb what she had just said. "I want you to know that I truly regret what happened before. I can't change what I did, but I'm here now, and I won't fail you again." Amelia didn't respond immediately. She seemed to be wrestling with her own thoughts, her own fears. Finally, she spoke softly. "I don't expect everything to be perfect. I just hope you're consistent. This baby deserves that, and so do I." Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of those words. He knew he still had a lot to prove, but for the first time in months, he felt he was beginning to rebuild something with Amelia, even if it wasn't a romantic relationship. That same night, back at his house, Ethan found Sarah waiting for him in the living room. Her expression was cold and resolute, as if she had made a decision she could no longer postpone. "We need to talk," she said, crossing her arms. Ethan sighed and sat across from her. He knew what was coming, and though it hurt, he also knew he couldn't stop it. "I can't go on like this," Sarah said, her voice firm but laden with emotion. "I'm not the woman who can accept being a second priority in your life. You need to focus on your child and Amelia, and I need something different." Ethan nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I understand, Sarah, and I'm sorry I put you in this position." She looked at him one last time, with a mix of sadness and resignation. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Ethan. Take care of that baby." When Sarah left, Ethan was left alone, with an emptiness in his chest, but also with a clarity he hadn't possessed before. He knew that even though he had lost Sarah, he was doing the right thing by prioritizing his child and Amelia. It was the price he had to pay for his past mistakes, but he was willing to face it. For the first time in a long time, he felt he was moving in the right direction. Can the arrival of a new life heal old wounds, offering a chance for redemption and a family built on unexpected foundations? The day arrived sooner than expected. Ethan was in his office, reviewing documents when his phone rang. Looking at the screen, he saw Amelia's name. A knot tightened in his stomach as he answered. "Ethan?" she said, her voice strained. "It's the baby. I'm at the hospital." The words hit him like a lightning bolt. Without wasting a second, Ethan dropped everything and rushed out. During the frantic drive to the hospital, his mind raced, a blur of anxiety, excitement, and fear. He hadn't imagined the moment would come so soon, but he knew he had to be there, that he had to prove his commitment was real. When he arrived at the hospital, he found Amelia in a bed, her face pale but serene. She was accompanied by a nurse who was adjusting the monitors around her. Ethan approached slowly, his heart pounding. "How are you?" he asked, gently taking her hand. "I'm fine," Amelia replied with a weak smile. "I think he's just eager to meet you." They both chuckled softly, though Ethan could feel the tension in the air. For the next few hours, he stayed by her side, making sure she had everything she needed. The wait was long and exhausting, but Ethan didn't move for a moment. He was determined to be there for her and for his child. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the doctors entered the room and began the delivery process. Ethan held Amelia's hand tightly, offering words of encouragement as she struggled through each contraction. He had never felt something so intense, so real. It was a moment that would change him forever. The baby's cry filled the room, and Ethan felt his entire world stop. When the doctor placed the newborn in Amelia's arms, Ethan couldn't stop the tears from rolling down his face. It was a boy, perfect and fragile, barely covered by a small blanket. "He's beautiful," Ethan whispered, looking at the baby in awe. "He's our son." Amelia looked at him with an expression of exhaustion but also profound satisfaction. "Yes, he is." The next few minutes were a blur of emotions. Ethan took the baby in his arms, feeling an immediate connection he had never experienced before. In that instant, everything else ceased to matter. The mistakes of the past, the doubts, the fears. There was only him, Amelia, and that tiny being who had just arrived in the world. Later, as Amelia rested in her bed, Ethan sat beside her, holding the baby. "I promise I'm going to be here for you too," he said firmly. "I won't fail you." Amelia, though tired, looked at him with a faint smile. "I hope so, Ethan, for this little one's sake." That night, Ethan felt as if a new door had opened in his life. He had lost many things, but he had also gained something invaluable. The chance to be better, to build something real and lasting, and he wasn't going to waste it. Part 8. The Unconventional Family. What does it mean to truly win in life? Is it material success? Or the courage to embrace an imperfect path to profound connection and a family built on resilience? Months after the baby's birth, Ethan's life had changed in ways he never imagined. His routine, once dominated by long work hours and endless meetings, now revolved around diapers, bottles, and his son's small but significant milestones. Though the path hadn't been easy, every sacrifice was worth it when he saw his child smile or held his tiny hand in his own. Amelia, for her part, had begun to see Ethan in a new light. Although she maintained a certain emotional distance, she couldn't ignore the genuine effort he was making. He was there for every doctor's appointment, every sleepless night, and every small moment that required patience and dedication. Sometimes, she would watch him playing with the baby and wonder if this Ethan had always been there, hidden beneath the excessive ambition that had once separated them. One afternoon, while they were at the park, Ethan pushed the stroller as Amelia walked beside him. It was a sunny day, and the baby slept peacefully under the shade of a tree. Ethan broke the silence. "You know," he said, his gaze fixed on the path, "I never thought my life would take this turn, but now I can't imagine anything different." Amelia glanced at him, evaluating the sincerity in his voice. "You've changed, Ethan. I see it in the way you care for our son." But don't forget you're still building this. Trust isn't regained overnight. I know, he replied with a slight nod. And I'm willing to keep working at it, not just for him, but for you too. I want you to know I'm here for whatever you need. Amelia smiled, a small but genuine smile. You're doing well, Ethan. Better than I expected. Over time, the dynamic between them began to soften. Although they didn't become a couple again, they managed to find a balance that allowed them to co-parent and, in a sense, be friends. Ethan made an effort to be consistent, demonstrating with actions what words alone couldn't repair. One day, while they were playing with the baby in Amelia's living room, the little one, who was already starting to babble, held out his arms to Ethan. "Papa," he said with a mischievous smile. Ethan felt a lump in his throat, his heart pounding. It was the first time he had heard that word from his son's lips. Amelia looked at him, and in her eyes was a mix of emotions. Pride, tenderness, and a spark of hope. "I think he likes you," she said with a smile. "I hope he always does," Ethan replied, taking the baby in his arms. "I promise I'll never fail him." The family that had once been fragmented was now finding its own way. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and for Ethan, that was enough. He had learned that true success wasn't in his career or his bank account, but in the connections he built with the people who mattered most. And this time, he wasn't going to let it go. Call to action and final thoughts. The unexpected path to belonging. Friends, did this story of transformation and redemption move you? Every decision we make can change not only our lives, but also those of the people we love most. If Ethan's journey towards fatherhood and reconciliation touched you, don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends, so they can also reflect on the power of change and the importance of family relationships. Moreover, if you enjoy stories filled with emotion and inspiring messages, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. We want to hear more from you. Where are you watching us from? Write in the comments. We'd love to read your thoughts and connect with you.
Elliot Grayson adjusted the lapels of his sharp gray suit, the hum of lively conversation and clinking glasses fading into the background. The ballroom of San Francisco's most prestigious gala was alive with opulence, but to him it felt hollow. As one of the city's leading architects, Elliot was a man admired for his precision and vision, yet he often felt adrift in the very world he had helped shape. The night's event, meant to celebrate the unveiling of his latest skyscraper design, felt like just another obligation, a performance to uphold his image. He scanned the crowd with little interest, his mind wandering to the ache he carried within. It wasn't the fame or success that kept him moving forward. It was something, or rather someone, he'd lost long ago. Charlotte, the woman he had loved deeply during his college years, had been taken from him in a tragic accident that shattered his dreams of a shared future. Tonight, something stirred within him as he slipped out of the venue into the cool evening air. Walking through the quiet streets, Elliot could never have imagined that this would be the night his past would come rushing back in the most unexpected way. The cool San Francisco breeze carried the scent of damp pavement as Elliot wandered aimlessly through the quiet streets. The distant hum of traffic and the glow of streetlights wrapped the city in an ethereal stillness, a stark contrast to the clamor of the gala he had just left behind. His thoughts were interrupted as he crossed a small plaza and noticed a flower cart stationed under the glow of a nearby lamp. Behind the cart stood a woman arranging a bouquet of daisies and lilacs. Elliot's steps faltered. Her profile, illuminated by the soft light, hit him like a thunderclap, a vivid echo of a life he thought he had lost forever. Maya, the name etched on the wooden sign above the stall, seemed utterly ordinary, but her face was anything but. It was as if the years had rewound in an instant. Her soft brown hair and delicate features mirrored someone Elliot thought he would never see again, Charlotte. Unable to stop himself, he approached. "Excuse me," he said, his voice breaking slightly. The woman turned toward him, and for a fleeting moment their eyes met. The resemblance was undeniable. Elliot's breath caught, but before he could say more, her expression shifted. There was no recognition, only guarded uncertainty. She took a small step back, clutching the bouquet as if to shield herself. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, softening his tone. You look like someone I used to know." Maya's gaze lingered on him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I think you're mistaken," she replied, her voice calm but wary. "I'm sorry, sir." As she turned her attention back to the flowers, Elliot stood frozen, his heart pounding. It couldn't be her. Could it? He took one last glance at her before walking away, questions swirling in his mind. Elliot spent the rest of the night unable to shake the image of Maya from his mind. The resemblance to Charlotte wasn't just striking, it was haunting. By morning, the questions had overwhelmed him. He needed answers. Sitting at his sleek desk overlooking the San Francisco skyline, Elliot dialed his assistant Ryan, whose resourcefulness had proven invaluable in both business and personal matters. "Ryan," Elliot began, his tone measured but urgent, "I need you to find out everything you can about a woman named Maya. She runs a flower cart in Hayes Plaza. Start with city permits and work from there." Ryan hesitated. "Is this business?" "It's personal," Elliot replied, already anticipating the follow-up questions. "Just be discreet." By late afternoon, Ryan called back with preliminary information. "Her name is Maya Rivers," he reported. "She's been running that flower cart for about 4 years. No criminal record, no significant online presence. Lives alone in a small apartment a few blocks from the plaza. Nothing unusual, really." Elliot sat back, processing the details. On paper, she seemed ordinary. A far cry from the vivacious and ambitious Charlotte he had once known. Yet, something about her felt familiar in a way that defied logic. As memories of Charlotte flooded back, Elliot found himself transported to the days of their youth. He remembered her laughter echoing through the architecture studio, her encouragement during late nights as they sketched out dreams of building a future together. Her sudden death in a car accident had shattered him, leaving an unfillable void that no amount of success, no skyscraper, could ever replace. But Maya wasn't Charlotte. Or was she? There were subtle differences. The guarded way Maya carried herself, the faint lines around her eyes. Signs of someone who had faced struggles Charlotte never had. Over the next few days, Elliot found himself returning to the plaza, watching from a distance as Maya worked. The more he observed, the more convinced he became that fate had brought her back into his life. But why had she denied knowing him? If she truly was Charlotte, what had happened to her in the years since that fateful accident? Elliot knew one thing for certain. He couldn't let this mystery go unanswered. Elliot's visits to Maya's flower cart became a daily ritual. Each morning, he would arrive with a cup of coffee in hand, always finding an excuse to linger near her stall. At first, Maya kept her distance, her politeness tinged with caution. But Elliot's persistence was disarming, and slowly, the walls she had carefully built around herself began to crack. "You must really like flowers," Maya said one morning, her tone light but probing as she handed him a bouquet of sunflowers. Elliot chuckled, meeting her gaze. "I do, but I think it's more the company that keeps me coming back." Maya's cheeks flushed slightly, and she looked away, busying herself with rearranging a display of tulips. "You're not like my usual customers," she admitted softly. Over the following weeks, their conversations grew longer, transitioning from polite exchanges about flowers to meaningful discussions about life, poetry, and the hidden beauty in the mundane. Elliot learned that Maya loved poetry and had a knack for arranging blooms that told silent stories. She, in turn, began to ask questions about him, his work as an architect, his favorite places in the city, and what drew him to her cart every morning. "There's something about you," she said one day, hesitating as if she wasn't sure she should continue. "It's like I've met you before." Elliot's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his tone steady. "Maybe it's just familiarity. You remind me of someone I used to know, a very important person." Maya's brows furrowed, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "Who?" Elliot paused, weighing whether to reveal the truth. "Her name was Charlotte," he said carefully. "She was someone I cared about deeply. She passed away a long time ago." Maya nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. As their connection deepened, Elliot noticed subtle changes in Maya. She began to trust him, her reserved demeanor softening into something warmer. Yet, he could sense the tension within her, the faint but undeniable feeling that she was holding back a part of herself. Each day, Elliot grew more certain that Maya was connected to Charlotte in a way neither of them fully understood. But how could he help her see it without overwhelming her? The first time Maya mentioned her dreams, it was almost in passing. "I've been having strange dreams lately," she said one morning, her voice uncertain as she handed Elliot a bouquet of hydrangeas. "Flashes of places, faces, but they don't make sense." Elliot's breath caught. "What kind of faces?" he asked, trying to keep his tone casual. Maya hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of a rose petal. "A man's face. Sometimes he's smiling, other times, I don't know. It feels familiar, but I can't place it." Elliot wanted to press her for details, but knew he had to tread carefully. He couldn't risk scaring her off, not when she was so close to uncovering the truth. A week later, the dam broke. They were sitting on a bench near the flower cart, the quiet hum of the city fading into the background. Maya turned to him, her eyes searching his. "Elliot," she began hesitantly, "I feel like I know you. I don't understand it, but it's like there's something connecting us." Elliot took a deep breath. He couldn't hold back any longer. "Maya, there's a reason for that," he said softly. "You remind me so much of someone I lost, someone I loved, Charlotte. And I think you might be her." Maya stared at him, her face pale. What are you saying? He explained everything. The accident, her resemblance to Charlotte, and the dreams she had described. Maya listened in stunned silence, her expression shifting from disbelief to confusion and finally to fear. "This is impossible," she said, her voice rising as she backed away. "If what you're saying is true, then who am I? Everything I've known, everything I've built, it's all a lie." Elliot reached for her hand, his voice steady. "You're Maya, but you might also be Charlotte. We'll figure this out together, I promise." Maya pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. "I need time," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can handle this right now." As she walked away, Elliot felt the weight of her uncertainty pressing down on him. He had given her the truth, but it was up to her to decide what to do with it. Elliot watched Maya walk away, her confusion and fear cutting him to the core. He realized he couldn't leave her to face the storm of uncertainty alone. Determined to find answers, he decided to dig deeper into the shadows of Charlotte's tragic past and its uncanny link to Maya's present life. The key, he believed, lay in unraveling the events surrounding the accident that had taken Charlotte away. He called Ryan, his ever-reliable assistant, with a new task. "Ryan, I need you to dig into records. An accident that killed Charlotte Carter. Look for anything unusual, especially connections to my father, Victor Grayson." There was a pause on the line. "Victor, are you suggesting he was involved?" "Yes, check," Elliot said, his voice tight. "I have a feeling there's more to this than I've been told." A few days later, Ryan returned with news. "I found something," he began, cautiously. Inside were old police reports and hospital records. Ryan began to explain. The accident didn't kill Charlotte outright. She was found unconscious and severely injured by a passerby who called for help. But here's the strange part. Someone intervened before the authorities arrived. The witness reported seeing a black sedan leaving the scene. That car was registered to Grayson Holdings. Elliot's jaw tightened. And then what? Charlotte was taken to a private facility under a fabricated identity, Emily Carson, a name meant to erase her existence completely. The records show she had amnesia from the head trauma, but instead of reuniting her with her life, she was discharged under mysterious circumstances. "I suspect your father orchestrated this, erasing her identity to keep her away from you." Elliot's chest tightened as he imagined Charlotte, lost and alone, robbed of her memories and thrust into a life that wasn't hers. "How did she become Maya?" Ryan hesitated before continuing. "It seems she was placed in a small-town community under a fabricated identity. Over time, she must have built a new life, not remembering anything of her past. It's likely Victor kept tabs on her to ensure she never resurfaced." Elliot's rage simmered as the pieces clicked into place. His father had not only taken Charlotte away, but also destroyed her sense of self, leaving her to fend for herself under a false name. Elliot confronted Victor, his voice trembling with anger. "You didn't just take her from me. You stole her entire life." Victor's icy reply cut deep. It was necessary. She would have ruined everything. Returning to Maya, Elliot explained everything. Her eyes widened as the truth sank in, her voice trembling. "So, I've been living someone else's life all this time." Elliot took her hands in his voice steady. "No, Maya. You've always been you. And now, we'll rebuild everything they took from you. Together." For days, Maya wrestled with the revelations about her past. The life she thought was hers had been built on a lie, orchestrated by someone she had never known. Yet, through the chaos of rediscovery, one constant remained. Elliot. "You don't have to face this alone," he told her one evening as they stood by her flower cart, the city lights glowing softly around them. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. "I don't even know who I am anymore," Maya admitted, her voice wavering. "You're Maya," Elliot replied firmly, "and you're Charlotte. Both lives, both identities. They're yours. You don't have to choose. Together, we'll rebuild something new." With Elliot's unwavering support, Maya began to embrace both parts of herself. Charlotte, the vibrant woman of her past, and Maya, the resilient survivor she had become. She decided to embrace her life as Maya, while exploring the fragments of Charlotte that lingered in her heart. Elliot, ever patient, stood by her side through every small step forward. Together they came up with an idea, a flower shop that symbolized second chances. They named it the Bloom Room, a tribute to the resilience of love and the possibility of renewal. As the shop took shape, so did their relationship, blending the past and present into something beautiful and entirely their own. As the grand opening of the Bloom Room approached, the little shop became a beacon of warmth and hope in the heart of the city. Its shelves overflowed with vibrant blooms, each arrangement carefully crafted by Maya's hands. Customers came not just for flowers, but for the quiet inspiration the shop exuded, a testament to the power of starting anew. Elliot stood beside Maya at the entrance, their fingers intertwined. The journey to this moment hadn't been easy, but the love they shared had weathered every storm. Maya glanced up at him, her eyes sparkling with gratitude and quiet joy. "I never thought I'd find myself again," she said softly. Elliot leaned down, his voice tender. "You didn't just find yourself. You found us, and we're stronger than ever." In the weeks that followed, life at the Bloom Room flourished. Elliot and Maya worked together, their bond deepening with every passing day. In time, they welcomed Maya's lost memories not as shadows of the past, but as pieces of a mosaic that had shaped who she was. Their days were filled with laughter, love, and the promise of a future unburdened by tragedy. Together, they created a life that was vibrant, authentic, and entirely their own, a happily ever after in full bloom. If you enjoyed this story of love, resilience, and second chances, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll be the first to experience more heartfelt stories that inspire and move you. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What part of Elliot and Maya's journey resonated with you the most? Thank you for being part of our journey. Let's continue sharing stories that inspire hope and remind us all of the beauty in second chances. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe and join our growing family. You can't keep acting like this, Liam, Vanessa Sinclair sighed, adjusting the sparkling diamond bracelet on her wrist. Our guests will notice something's off. Liam Carter sat stiffly in the private lounge of the upscale bridal boutique, watching as his fiancée examined her reflection in the full-length mirror. The custom-designed wedding gown, the flawless makeup, the poised elegance. Vanessa was everything society expected in a perfect wife. Everything's fine, Liam muttered, loosening his tie slightly. Is it? Vanessa turned to him, arching an eyebrow. You're a world-class architect, Liam. You negotiate multi-million-dollar deals, handle impossible deadlines, and yet you're nervous about a wedding? A wedding is different, he said. It's not just business. Vanessa let out a soft chuckle, smoothing the fabric of her dress. It is a transaction, in a way, a merging of two powerful families, a partnership that makes sense on every level. Liam forced a smile, but the weight in his chest only grew heavier. In just 1 week, he would marry Vanessa Sinclair. Beautiful, intelligent, ambitious. She was the perfect choice, on paper. Standing up, he adjusted his suit jacket, feeling suffocated in the lavish boutique. I need some air, Liam said, walking out before Vanessa could protest. Outside, the cool spring breeze brushed against his face, but it did little to clear his mind. 1 more week. 1 more week until he was bound to the woman everyone said was perfect for him. So why did it feel like he was making the biggest mistake of his life? The rehearsal dinner was held at an upscale restaurant in the heart of New York, where crystal chandeliers cast golden reflections on fine wine glasses. Everything was perfect, just as Vanessa had planned. Liam sat at the grand banquet table, only half listening to the chatter around him. Vanessa's parents were deep in conversation with real estate moguls, while his mother exchanged pleasantries with New York's top architects. He tightened his grip around his glass, feeling more like a chess piece in a game he never agreed to play. You okay? Vanessa leaned in, whispering, her poised smile never faltering. Yeah, just a little tired. We still have the bridesmaid and groomsmen introductions coming up. Try to keep up, she said, before returning to her conversation with an important guest. Liam sighed, rubbing his temple. That was when the MC's voice echoed through the speakers. And now, introducing the maid of honor, Emma Collins. Liam froze. That name. His head snapped up, heart pounding, and then, amidst the applause, a familiar figure stepped onto the stage. Emma, the woman he once loved more than anything, the woman who left without a word, the woman he had spent years trying and failing to forget. And now she was standing there, just a few feet away, bathed in golden light. Liam held his breath. A wave of dizziness swept over him. Emma Collins wasn't just a memory anymore. She was back. Liam stood on the restaurant's balcony, taking a deep breath as he tried to steady his pulse. Inside, the sound of laughter and conversation carried on, but it all felt distant, muted beneath the storm raging inside him. A voice called out behind him, soft, yet powerful enough to stop him in his tracks. Liam. He turned. Emma stood there, the glow of the city casting a soft halo around her face. Time had passed, but her eyes, those same eyes that once held his entire world, hadn't changed. 1,000 questions burned on his tongue, years' worth of anger, confusion, and heartbreak fighting to be spoken. But looking at her now, he didn't know where to begin. I didn't expect to see you here, he finally said, his voice rougher than he intended. Emma clenched her hands together, as if weighing her words. Vanessa and I were close in college. When she asked me to be her maid of honor, I didn't think I'd be seeing you like this. Really? Liam let out a humorless laugh. Because I remember you never even saying goodbye. Emma looked away. I didn't think you'd want an explanation. Don't act like this was my choice, Emma. His voice sharpened. I deserve to know why. Silence stretched between them. Emma gripped the railing, her gaze locked on the skyline. Liam, she started, then stopped. What happened? He pressed, patient but relentless. She took a deep breath, as if fighting an internal battle. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter? Liam scoffed. Then look me in the eye and tell me you never loved me, that you left because you didn't care anymore. Emma shut her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, The pain inside them made his chest tighten. "It wasn't like that," she whispered. "Then what was it?" She bit her lip, hesitating for what felt like an eternity. And when she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible over the wind. "Your mother came to see me." Liam went rigid. Emma turned away, but it was too late. He had already seen the hurt in her eyes. Liam had never felt so completely out of control. He walked into his apartment past midnight, tossing his suit jacket onto the couch, his hands still shaking from the anger simmering beneath his skin. His conversation with Emma replayed in his mind like a broken record. "Your mother came to see me. She told me I wasn't good enough for you. She wrote me a check and told me to leave." But the words that shattered him the most were Emma's next ones. "I didn't take it." Emma hadn't taken the money. She hadn't left because she was bribed. She left because she thought she was doing what was best for him, because she loved him. Liam clenched his fists. His mother had orchestrated his entire life in ways he had never realized. She hadn't just shaped his career, she had stolen his chance to choose his own love. He pulled out his phone. Dozens of messages from Vanessa lit up the screen. "Where are you? Tomorrow is our big day, Liam. Get your head straight. Everything is perfect. Don't ruin this." "Perfect?" Liam let out a bitter laugh. Perfect for who? For his mother? For Vanessa? For the elite society they lived in? Or for him? He tossed his phone onto the table, leaning against the wall, staring blankly at the ceiling. Could he really go through with this? The next morning, Liam stood in the groom's dressing room, staring at his reflection. The expensive tuxedo fit perfectly, not a single flaw. But the man in the mirror felt like a stranger. The door swung open. It was Mark, his best man and oldest friend. "You good?" Mark asked. But as soon as he saw Liam's expression, his smile faded. "Don't tell me you're thinking about running." Liam took a deep breath, his voice quiet but firm. "I can't do this, Mark." Mark's eyes widened. "Are you insane? This is the wedding of the year. Do you have any idea what kind of fallout this is going to cause?" Liam exhaled slowly, a strange sense of clarity washing over him. "I know, and I don't care." Liam stood at the altar, feeling suffocated in the perfectly tailored tuxedo his mother had chosen for him. Vanessa stood across from him, radiating confidence and grace. Around them, hundreds of guests watched in anticipation, waiting for the flawless moment to unfold. Emma stood among the bridesmaids, just a few steps away. She wasn't looking at him. Or maybe she was forcing herself not to. The priest began to speak. "Liam Carter, do you take Vanessa Sinclair to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love, honor, and remain faithful to for all the days of your life?" The air was so still, Liam could hear his own heartbeat. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Vanessa gave his hand a slight squeeze. "Say it, Liam. Just finish this." Emma's fingers curled tightly together, tension radiating from her posture. Liam looked directly at the priest. "No." A shocked gasp rippled through the crowd. Vanessa went rigid. "Liam? What?" Liam inhaled deeply, feeling like he was breathing freely for the first time in years. "I can't do this, Vanessa. I'm sorry." Around them, whispers erupted. His mother shot up from her seat, her face draining of color. Vanessa, the woman who was always in control, always composed, was, for the first time, speechless. "Liam, what the hell are you doing?" But Liam didn't answer her. He turned to Emma. Emma was staring at him, utterly frozen. And before she could react, Liam stepped down from the altar and took her hand. "Come with me." "Wait, Liam." Emma shook her head, panicked. "You can't just..." "I just walked away from this marriage in front of hundreds of people, in front of my mother, in front of the entire world." He tightened his grip on her hand. "If you're running again, then this time, I'm coming with you." Emma's eyes were wide, filled with 1,000 emotions. Then, wordlessly, she gripped his hand tighter. Together, they walked out of the church, leaving everything behind. Liam had no idea how far they had run. All he knew was that as the church doors slammed shut behind them, the world suddenly felt quiet. No more gasps from the crowd, no more rage from his mother or Vanessa, just the sound of their footsteps against the pavement of a New York street. They stopped in a small park, breathing hard, their hands still locked together. Emma was the first to speak. "Liam, you just walked out of $1 million wedding in front of hundreds of people." Her voice trembled. "Do you even realize what you just did?" Liam laughed, an actual, genuine laugh, not the forced kind he had been perfecting for years. "I think, for the first time in my life, I did something I actually wanted." Emma bit her lip, her expression a mix of panic and something else, something softer. "Liam, you just lost everything. Your career, your reputation, the life you built." "No, Emma." He shook his head, looking her straight in the eye. "I just found myself." A long silence stretched between them. Emma blinked, as if trying to process everything that had just happened. "So what are you going to do now?" she asked quietly. Liam took a deep breath. "Start over." "With me?" Emma's voice was cautious. Liam held her gaze, his expression steady. "No, with myself first. You were right. I need to figure out who I am, not for you, but for me. But," he gave her hand a gentle squeeze, "I also don't want to lose you again." Emma looked down at their joined hands, then slowly let go. "Liam, I can't be the only reason you change. I won't make that mistake again." He nodded, respecting her words. "Then, can you give me a chance to prove I can stand on my own?" Emma was silent for a long moment before finally smiling. "All right, but there are no shortcuts this time, Liam." He smiled back, lighter than he had felt in years. "I don't need shortcuts anymore." This time, they didn't run. They walked, one step at a time, toward a future that was uncertain, but real. 3 months later, Liam stood by the window of his small apartment, looking down at the bustling streets of New York. No more lavish parties, no million-dollar deals, no office at the top of a skyscraper. After walking out of his wedding, his mother had cut him off financially, his company refused to take him back, and his former business partners quickly turned their backs on him. He had lost everything. And yet, for the first time in his life, he had no regrets. He had rediscovered his passion, not soulless high-rises, but spaces that actually mattered. Now he worked on community architecture projects, helping transform forgotten neighborhoods into creative spaces where artists and everyday people could express themselves freely. His coffee cup rested on the table as his phone buzzed. "Emma Collins sent you a message." His heart beat a little faster as he clicked it open. "There's a small art exhibit at the community park today. Want to come?" He didn't have to think long. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Just to look at paintings?" A moment later, Emma replied, "Coffee too, if you want." Liam smiled. No grand promises, no rushed expectations, just two people, starting over in their own way. He grabbed his keys and stepped out of his small but hopeful apartment, walking toward a place that maybe this time truly felt like home. 1 year later, Liam stood in the middle of the small garden, strings of warm lights glowing above him. It was a space he had designed himself, turning it into a community art haven. But tonight, it wasn't just about art. Tonight, it was about her. Emma stood just a few feet away, guiding a group of children as they put the finishing touches on a mural. Paint smudged her hands, and her eyes sparkled as she laughed with them. Liam's heart pounded. He had spent the past year rebuilding his life, a life he chose. No more family expectations, no more elite society dictating his every move. Just him, his passion for design, and her. Emma turned, surprised to find him standing there, holding a small velvet box. "Liam?" She frowned slightly, confused. He took a deep breath and stepped closer. "I once stood in front of hundreds of people, about to say vows to someone I didn't love." Liam's voice trembled slightly, but his eyes held nothing but certainty. "Today, I don't need hundreds of people. I just need one." Emma's eyes widened as he knelt down. "I spent too long not realizing that the most important thing in my life was you," Liam said, opening the box to reveal a simple yet elegant ring reflecting the golden lights above them. "And this time, I want to do this right. Emma Collins, will you marry me?" Emma froze, tears welling in her eyes. She didn't need to think. She didn't need to run. She nodded, a brilliant smile spreading across her face. "Yes, Liam, yes." Applause erupted from the people around them. "Mark, Emma's colleagues, the friends they had made along the way. But for Liam, only Emma mattered. 1 week later, they had a small wedding in that very same garden. No media, no whispers from high society, just friends, the children Emma taught, and the people who truly mattered. Emma walked down the aisle, this time as his bride. Not an arrangement, not an obligation, but love. Liam smiled as she took his hand, knowing that this time he had made the right choice. Anna sat quietly in the dimly lit room, her hands trembling as she clutched a worn photograph of her young son, Eli. His bright smile, framed by messy curls, was her sole source of strength. The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her chest, but she knew she had no other choice. The room buzzed with quiet murmurs, the sound of polished shoes clicking against marble floors echoing in the vast hall. Tonight, Anna would be auctioned, not as a person but as an opportunity, a woman willing to sign a contract to bear a child for one of the wealthiest men in the world. In the corner of the grand hall, Chris, a man whose wealth was matched only by his mysterious aura, observed the proceedings. He was here for one reason: to secure an heir. When Anna's name was called, she stepped onto the stage, her legs trembling under the piercing stares of the crowd. Chris's sharp gaze locked onto her, and without hesitation, he made his bid. The gavel struck. Sold! Anna's life had just changed forever. Anna hadn't always been this desperate. There were days not long ago when life was simpler, even if it wasn't perfect. She'd spend her mornings laughing with Eli over breakfast, his giggles filling their small but cozy apartment. But over time, the bills piled up. The landlord's threats of eviction grew more frequent, and the sight of Eli going to bed hungry became unbearable. Her love for her son was her guiding light, but it also came with a weight she couldn't bear alone. Every decision she made was for him, but no matter how hard she tried, it never seemed enough. When Anna heard about the auction, it felt like the last shred of hope. The idea horrified her, standing on a stage, reduced to a commodity. But the promise of financial security for Eli made her push aside her pride. She told herself it wasn't about her. It was about ensuring that Eli would never have to endure the struggles she faced. As she sat in the waiting room of the grand hall, surrounded by other women, her stomach churned with fear. Her mind raced with doubts. Was this the right choice? Would Eli understand someday, or would he resent her for it? But the thought of his innocent face and the warmth of his small arms around her gave her strength. If this was what it took to give him a chance at a better future, then so be it. Anna took a deep breath and rose to her feet. She didn't have a choice. She never had. Chris Zaid sat at the far end of the hall, his piercing eyes scanning the stage as if weighing each woman's worth with a single glance. Dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, he exuded power and authority, yet his expression remained unreadable. Chris wasn't here for pleasure or amusement. He was here for a purpose. A child to carry on his legacy. For Chris, emotions were a luxury he couldn't afford. His life revolved around control, precision, and calculated decisions. The idea of a traditional family held no appeal to him, yet the pressure to produce an heir was relentless. He saw the auction as a solution, a way to secure what he needed without entanglements or distractions. When Anna stepped onto the stage, her vulnerability was evident. Her trembling hands, the way her eyes darted nervously, and the slight hitch in her breath spoke volumes. She wasn't like the others. She didn't carry an air of confidence or ambition. She carried something else: desperation and strength. 5 million, Chris's deep voice cut through the murmurs, silencing the crowd. The auctioneer paused, startled by the bold bid, and quickly declared her sold. Later that evening, Anna sat across from Chris in a private room. The opulence of the space was overwhelming, with gilded furniture and towering bookshelves. But Chris's cold demeanor was what unnerved her the most. He slid a crisp envelope across the table. "This is the contract," he said firmly. "Read it carefully." Anna's hand shook as she opened it. The terms were clear. She would live in his estate, undergo medical procedures to conceive a child, and leave after the birth. In return, she would receive a life-changing sum of money. "Do you understand what this means?" Chris asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Anna met his gaze, her fear barely concealed. "I do," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Then sign," he said, placing a pen on the table. Her chest tightened, but she thought of Eli. With trembling hands, Anna signed her name, sealing a fate she couldn't undo. Anna arrived at Chris's sprawling estate in the early morning, the towering gates parting slowly to reveal a world she could never have imagined. The mansion, surrounded by immaculate gardens and shimmering fountains, seemed to stretch endlessly. Its grandeur only made her feel smaller, more out of place. As the limousine pulled to a stop, a butler greeted her with a polite but detached nod, ushering her inside. Chris was waiting in the grand foyer, his hands clasped behind his back, his sharp gaze fixed on her. "Welcome," he said curtly. "You'll find your accommodations prepared. Amira, my housekeeper, will show you around and explain the rules." His voice carried no warmth, and Anna could feel the weight of his control in every word. Amira, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, led her through the endless hallways. Despite her gentle demeanor, Anna sensed an unspoken caution in the way Amira interacted with her. In her room, a space larger than her entire apartment, Anna found a wardrobe filled with elegant clothes, all carefully selected for her. She hesitated before touching anything, feeling like a guest in someone else's life. Days turned into weeks, and her interactions with Chris remained strictly formal. They shared sparse conversations, mostly about the logistics of the agreement. Chris treated her as though she were another asset in his meticulously controlled world. Yet, Anna couldn't ignore the glimpses of humanity she occasionally saw in him. Once, she found him in the garden, carefully pruning a bonsai tree. His focus was intense, and when she asked about it, he simply replied, "It belonged to my mother." His voice softened ever so slightly, and for a moment, Anna saw something deeper, a man shaped by loss and isolation. But those moments were fleeting. Most of the time, Chris was distant, his walls firmly in place. Anna spent her days wandering the mansion, feeling more like a prisoner than a participant in this arrangement. She thought often of Eli, wondering if she had made the right choice. At night, as she lay in the enormous bed, she clung to the thought of him, her only source of comfort in this cold, unfamiliar world. Anna had done her best to keep her personal life hidden, but secrets have a way of surfacing. One evening, while exploring the mansion, Chris walked into her room unannounced. His sharp gaze immediately landed on a photograph sitting on her nightstand, a picture of a young boy with curly hair and a bright smile. He picked it up, his expression unreadable, before turning to face her. "Who is this?" he asked, his tone calm but edged with curiosity. Anna's heart raced. She had feared this moment, but knew it couldn't be avoided forever. Taking a deep breath, she replied, "He's my son. His name is Eli." Chris's brow furrowed as he set the photograph back on the nightstand with deliberate care. "You didn't mention you had a child before signing the contract. Why hide this?" Anna hesitated, her voice trembling. "I was afraid you'd reject me. For the agreement. I needed this. For him." "For him?" Chris's tone hardened slightly. "You agreed to bring another child into this world, yet you left your own son behind. How do you reconcile that?" Tears welled up in Anna's eyes. "Because I didn't have a choice," she admitted, her voice breaking. "We were barely surviving, the bills, the hunger. I couldn't let Eli suffer anymore. This was my only way to secure his future." Chris stood silently, his sharp features softening ever so slightly. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke, his tone unusually gentle. "Bring him here." Anna blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "What?" "Your son," Chris clarified, his gaze steady. "He shouldn't be separated from his mother. Have him live here. It will be easier for you to care for him, and it ensures you won't be distracted." Anna's breath caught in her throat. The idea of having Eli close to her, safe and cared for, was something she hadn't dared to hope for. "Thank you," she whispered, barely able to contain the relief and gratitude coursing through her. Chris nodded curtly, already turning to leave. "I'll have Amira prepare a room for him. Make the arrangements." As the door closed behind him, Anna collapsed onto the bed, tears streaming down her face. For the first time since signing the contract, she felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to give Eli a better life, even within the confines of this strange and uncertain arrangement. A week later, the mansion came alive with the sound of a child's laughter. Eli's wide eyes sparkled with wonder as he explored the sprawling estate, his small hands reaching out to touch the luxurious furnishings and curious decorations. For Anna, seeing him here, safe and happy, felt like a dream she didn't dare believe was real. Chris observed Eli from a distance, his usually stoic expression betraying a hint of curiosity. He wasn't accustomed to children, and the boy's energy was a stark contrast to the quiet, rigid environment he had cultivated. Still, there was something disarming about Eli's innocent enthusiasm. One afternoon, as Chris worked in his study, Eli peeked around the doorframe. "What are you doing?" the boy asked baldly, his head tilted with curiosity. Chris looked up, momentarily taken aback. "I'm reviewing documents," he replied, his tone even. Eli wandered in, unabashed. "Is it fun?" Chris couldn't help but chuckle, a sound that surprised even himself. "Not particularly," he admitted. Anna appeared moments later, breathless and apologetic. "I'm so sorry," she began, reaching for Eli's hand. "I told him not to disturb you." "It's fine," Chris interrupted, his voice calm but thoughtful. "Curiosity can lead to growth. Maybe one day he'll be running his own empire." Anna blinked, startled by his unexpected response. In that brief exchange, she saw a side of Chris she hadn't before, a man who, beneath his cold exterior, might have the capacity for kindness. Over time, small moments like this began to accumulate. Chris made an effort to include Eli in his daily life, from inviting him to walk through the gardens to teaching him simple games of strategy. Though his gestures were subtle and understated, Anna noticed them all. One evening, as Anna tucked Eli into bed, he looked up at her with a thoughtful expression. "Mr. Chris is nice," he said simply, his words carrying the innocent sincerity of a child. Anna smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "He's learning to be," she replied. That night, as she sat on the balcony, gazing at the stars, Anna felt a shift within her. The walls around Chris seemed to be cracking, piece by piece, and for the first time, she allowed herself to wonder if this arrangement could become something more. Months passed, and the mansion began to feel less like a gilded cage and more like a home. Anna watched as Chris and Eli grew closer, their bond forming in ways she hadn't anticipated. Chris, once distant and reserved, now spent his evenings playing chess with Eli or answering his endless questions about the world. But it was during a quiet afternoon in the garden that everything began to change. Anna had been watching from the balcony as Chris helped Eli plant a small flower in the corner of the meticulously maintained garden. The sight stirred something in her, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. That evening, as Anna settled Eli into bed, she lingered at his door, her heart heavy with thoughts of their future. Chris's gestures had been kind, but they didn't erase the reality of the contract. Soon, the child she was carrying would be born, and she would be expected to leave. Later that night, as Anna sat in the library with a book she wasn't really reading, Chris entered the room. His presence filled the space, but for once, it didn't feel imposing. "We need to talk," he said, his voice softer than usual. Anna set the book aside, her heart quickening. "About what?" Chris sat across from her, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "About the contract," he began. "I know it was meant to be a simple agreement. You'd have the child and then leave." Anna's stomach tightened. She nodded but didn't speak. "But things have changed," Chris continued, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Having Eli here, seeing how you've made this house feel alive, I can't imagine it going back to how it was." Anna's breath caught as his words sank in. She met his gaze, searching for any sign of hesitation, but found none. "What are you saying?" she asked quietly. "I'm saying I don't want you to leave," Chris said firmly. "Not you, not Eli, not the baby. I want us to try to build something real." Anna felt her heart swell with conflicting emotions. Hope, fear, and disbelief. She had longed to hear these words, but she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. "Prize," she began, her voice trembling. "This isn't something we can decide lightly." "I know," he replied, leaning forward, "but I'm willing to try if you are." For the first time, Anna allowed herself to believe that their story could have a different ending. The days following Chris's confession were filled with quiet but meaningful changes. He called his lawyers to revise the contract, removing the clause that required Anna to leave after the baby was born. Instead, he outlined a future where she and Eli could stay, not as obligations, but as a family. When Chris shared the revised contract with Anna, she hesitated, her hands trembling as she held the papers. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Chris met her gaze, his expression sincere. "Because I don't want you to feel trapped," he said softly. "I want you to stay because you choose to, not because you're bound by a piece of paper." Anna's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. For the first time, she felt seen, not as part of an agreement, but as someone who mattered. One evening, Anna approached Chris in the library, holding an envelope in her hand. She hesitated at the door before softly calling his name. He looked up from the document he was reviewing, immediately noticing the nervous energy about her. "Is something wrong?" he asked, standing and walking toward her. Anna took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with emotion as she handed him the envelope. "No, not wrong," she began, her voice trembling. "I just thought you should know." Chris opened the envelope and pulled out a medical report. His eyes scanned the page, and then he froze. For a moment, he seemed lost in thought, as if the words on the page carried a weight he wasn't prepared for. Slowly, his gaze lifted to meet Anna's. "You're pregnant?" he asked, his voice quiet, almost disbelieving, but there was a glimmer of something else. Joy. Anna nodded, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I just found out today," she admitted. "I wasn't sure how to tell you, but here we are." For a moment, Chris said nothing, his expression unreadable. Then, a smile broke across his face, small at first, but growing until it lit up his usually reserved features. "Anna, this is incredible," he said, his voice full of genuine joy. The warmth in his reaction made tears spill down Anna's cheeks. "I wasn't sure how you'd feel," she confessed. "How could I feel anything but happy?" Chris replied, stepping closer and taking her hands in his. "You've given me something I never thought I'd have. A family. This child, Eli, you've changed everything for me." The announcement brought a new energy to the mansion. Chris and Eli worked together to prepare the nursery, carefully assembling a crib while Anna watched with quiet amusement. Eli was thrilled by the news, eagerly declaring himself the baby's big brother and proudly telling anyone who would listen. One quiet evening, as the three of them sat in the garden beneath a blanket of stars, Eli leaned against Chris's arm. "Does this mean we're a real family now?" he asked, his voice filled with innocent hope. Chris smiled, placing a gentle hand on Eli's shoulder. "Yes," he said firmly, his voice carrying an assurance that even Eli could understand. Looking at Anna, his eyes softened with a tenderness that spoke volumes. "We are a family now, and that will never change." For Anna, the journey had been unexpected and challenging, but as she sat there with Eli and Chris, she realized they had built something worth fighting for: a home, a future, and a family. Months passed, and the mansion transformed into a place of warmth and laughter. Eli's cheerful voice echoed through the grand halls as he explored every corner of his new home, his happiness contagious. The nursery was finally ready, adorned with soft pastels, plush toys, and a mobile that twinkled with little stars. Anna marveled at the sight, her heart swelling with gratitude as she realized how far they had come. Chris, once a man defined by his cold precision, now embraced the chaos and joy that came with family. He spent his mornings working, but his afternoons were reserved for walks in the garden with Anna and Eli. He had even taken to reading bedtime stories to Eli, a ritual that became their special time together. One evening, Chris surprised Anna with a small celebration in the garden, stringing fairy lights across the trees and setting up a candlelit table. As they sat together, he raised his glass. "To you," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "for giving me what I didn't even know I needed. A family, a home, and hope." Anna smiled, her eyes shimmering with tears. "And to you," she replied softly, for proving that even the most unlikely beginnings can lead to something beautiful. The months leading to the baby's birth were a time of growth for all of them. Chris's once empty mansion now buzzed with life, its coldness replaced by the warmth of a family learning to love and trust. The night their baby arrived, Chris held the tiny newborn in his arms, his eyes glistening with emotion. He looked at Anna, who was resting after a long labor, and whispered, "He's perfect, just like his mother." As Anna drifted into sleep, Chris sat beside her, their son nestled in his arms. The mansion, once a symbol of isolation, now pulsed with life and love. Together, they had turned an improbable arrangement into a life they never could have imagined. A family bound not by a contract, but by something far stronger: love. What did you think of Anna and Chris's journey? Would you have made the same choices? Share your thoughts in the comments below and rate this story from 0 to 10. If you enjoyed this heartfelt tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more inspiring stories. See you in the next one. Olivia Carter never imagined that her first day at Sterling Dynamics would turn into a complete disaster. As an ambitious executive assistant, she wanted to make a great impression. Instead, chaos welcomed her. The moment she stepped into the building, a major system failure struck. Servers crashed, employees panicked, phones rang nonstop. "None of the files are accessible," someone shouted. "We might lose everything." Olivia gritted her teeth, trying to stay calm. She quickly dialed IT support, but the line was busy. Perfect. The digital age, yet technology decides to betray me on my first day, she muttered, slamming the phone onto the desk. Right then, a tall, sharply dressed man walked into the office. Impeccable suit, polished shoes, a commanding presence, yet he looked far too calm amidst the chaos. Olivia didn't think twice. She marched straight up to him. "You took way too long. Get to work. Our system is down." The man raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. "Excuse me, what?" Olivia crossed her arms, tapping her foot impatiently. "No time for questions. Fix it now, before I lose my job." She had no idea that the man standing before her wasn't an IT technician. He was Nathan Sterling, the CEO of the company. Without wasting a second, Olivia pushed the man into the chair and pointed at the screen. "Hurry up, just press a few keys and fix this already." Nathan raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "And what if I told you I can't fix it?" he asked, his tone calm. Olivia let out an exasperated sigh. "Oh, fantastic. First day on the job and I get stuck with an IT guy who has no idea what he's doing." Nathan remained composed, but there was an undeniable glint of amusement in his eyes. "So, what exactly do you want me to do?" "Pretend to care. Type something. Look like you're actually trying." Olivia crossed her arms, emphasizing every word like a boss giving orders. Nathan shrugged, then slowly placed his hands on the keyboard, tapping a few keys as if he was putting in the world's greatest effort. Olivia leaned in, watching closely. "Wow. So slow. Are you typing with just one finger?" Nathan glanced up, smirking. "Are you seriously telling me to work faster?" "Yes. What do you think this is? Brain surgery? Just click something, fix it, and let's move on." Nathan sighed dramatically, then pressed a single key on the keyboard. The entire office lit up as the system came back online. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. "Hallelujah!" someone cheered. Olivia clapped her hands, victorious. "Finally! That wasn't so hard, was it?" But then she noticed Nathan adjusting his cufflinks, his smirk growing. "And who said I work here?" Olivia froze. Her brain took a full 3 seconds to process his words. Right at that moment, a man in a gray suit rushed in, slightly out of breath. "Mr. Sterling, the board is waiting for you in the meeting room." Silence. Every single person in the office stared at Olivia. Nathan folded his arms, tilting his head slightly, clearly entertained. "Miss Carter," Nathan leaned in slightly, his smirk widening. "Any more orders for me?" Olivia felt her entire world collapse in slow motion. The air in the office grew unbearably thick as every pair of eyes fixated on her. "Oh no! Oh no, 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 no! This isn't happening!" Heat flooded her face. Her palms went ice cold. She wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Olivia felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She had just bossed around, scolded, and even rushed the CEO of the company like he was a clueless intern. And now he was staring directly at her, clearly entertained by this disaster. "I'm so fired." No one moved. No one even dared to breathe. Then Nathan let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "That was interesting." He turned to his assistant. "The board has been waiting long enough. Let's go." Olivia exhaled, thinking she had escaped. Maybe she could apologize later and salvage what was left of her dignity. But then, "Miss Carter, come with me." She froze. "I? What?" Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You wanted to explain the system issue to the board, didn't you?" The entire office held its breath. It felt like she had just been dragged into a courtroom with Nathan as the all-powerful judge. With no way out, she forced her legs to follow him into the boardroom. 20 minutes later, Olivia sat stiffly at the massive boardroom table, surrounded by high-level executives all staring at her. "So, how exactly did you solve the issue?" one director asked. Olivia swallowed hard. "Well, I made a mistake." Silence. She squeezed her eyes shut, then decided to just say it. "I mistook Mr. Sterling for an IT technician and asked him to fix the system." The room went dead silent. One of the directors dropped his pen out of pure shock. Nathan leaned back in his chair, amusement flickering in his eyes. And she was quite efficient. Rude, but efficient. No one dared to laugh, but a few executives coughed awkwardly, struggling to hold it in. Olivia just wanted to disappear into thin air. When the meeting ended, Nathan walked up to her slowly. "You're the first person to ever give me orders." Olivia nodded cautiously. "I apologize?" Nathan folded his arms, considering something, then finally spoke words she never expected. "I want you as my personal assistant." Olivia blinked rapidly. "Excuse me?" "Starting today, you work directly with me." Her mind went blank. One moment she was yelling at the CEO. Now she was his assistant? She wasn't sure if this was a career opportunity or a life sentence. But one thing was clear. Her life was never going to be the same. Olivia still couldn't believe what had just happened. Just hours ago, she thought she'd be fired. Now, she was the personal assistant to the CEO. Everything was happening too fast. As soon as Olivia sat down at her new desk, the phone began ringing nonstop. Before she could even answer, Nathan appeared, holding a thick folder. "You have 3 days to organize a charity gala for the company," he said casually. Olivia blinked. 3 days? That's right, the guest list includes top CEOs, politicians, and the media. I expect perfection. Olivia gaped at him. A high-profile event in 3 days? Waited, doesn't the company have an event planning team? Yes, but now you're in charge. Nathan shrugged. Olivia wanted to scream, but instead she gripped the folder tightly and tried to stay calm. The next 3 days were pure chaos. The florist canceled last minute. The venue requested last-minute design changes. The band backed out. The menu hadn't been approved. Olivia ran around the office, made dozens of phone calls, and tried to fix everything before it was too late. Meanwhile, Nathan remained completely unbothered. On the final day, Olivia stormed into his office, her eyes dark from exhaustion. "We have a serious problem," she announced. Nathan looked up, as if he had been expecting this. "Tell me." Olivia slammed the folder onto his desk. "The decorator quit, the band canceled, the chef refuses to adjust the menu, and I haven't slept in 3 days?" Nathan rested his chin on his hand, watching her. "So, in other words, everything is a disaster?" Olivia groaned. A very accurate summary. He didn't seem concerned. Instead, he picked up his phone and made a call. "George, I want the guest list and invitations finalized by tonight." After hanging up, he turned to Olivia. "The rest is up to you." Olivia stared at him. "That's it? No backup plan? No motivational speech?" Nathan smirked. "You don't need luck. You need coffee." Olivia glared at him, but still turned around and got back to work. Despite all the setbacks, the gala turned out perfect. Nathan stood beside Olivia, holding a glass of wine, his expression unreadable. "You did better than I expected." Olivia was exhausted but proud. One thing was certain, she had passed Nathan Sterling's first test. Olivia stood still amidst the dazzling scene of the gala. After 3 days of racing against time, everything was finally perfect. The grand chandeliers glowed, the elegant tables gleamed, and the city's most powerful people chatted over fine wine. She had done it, but instead of celebrating, Olivia felt a pair of eyes watching her. Nathan Sterling, as calm and unreadable as ever, stood across the room, a glass of wine in his hand, his gaze fixed on her. He was watching her. Olivia tried to ignore it, but her heartbeat betrayed her. Needing a moment to breathe, she stepped out onto the balcony, letting the cool air clear her mind. But before she could relax, a voice sounded behind her. "Running away?" Olivia turned around, facing David Lancaster, a sharp businessman and one of Nathan's biggest rivals. Just enjoying a moment of peace." She folded her arms. David smirked, swirling his drink. "You and Nathan seemed close." Olivia frowned. "We work together." "Do you really believe that's all it is?" David tilted his head, his voice layered with meaning. Before Olivia could answer, a deep voice interrupted. "I don't recall inviting you into this conversation." Nathan stood at the entrance, his eyes cold and unwavering. David chuckled, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, Sterling, just a harmless chat." Nathan didn't blink. "Olivia doesn't need your insinuations." David held his gaze for a moment, then shrugged and walked away, but not before casting Olivia one last knowing glance. Once they were alone, Nathan turned to Olivia. "Did he bother you?" Olivia forced a small smile. "I can handle myself." Nathan stepped closer, narrowing the space between them. "I know." His voice was softer now. "But that doesn't mean I'll stand by and watch." Olivia swallowed. Something had shifted between them. Nathan held her gaze. Then he leaned in slightly, but stopped. Waiting. Olivia didn't step back. She didn't kiss him, but she also didn't walk away. Nathan smirked, as if he knew exactly what was happening. "We have time," he murmured, stepping back, leaving her with a racing heart and more confusion than ever. Olivia thought that after that fateful night, everything would go back to normal. She was wrong. From that day, Nathan began a quiet but persistent pursuit. He was everywhere: meetings, coincidental lunches, even delivering coffee to her desk every morning. "Do you seriously have nothing better to do?" Olivia folded her arms. Nathan just shrugged, smirking. "I do, but no deal, no project, no billion-dollar contract is as important as this." At first, Olivia thought it was a joke, but Nathan never gave up. One late night, as she worked alone, Nathan appeared at her office door, holding a box of pastries. "You haven't eaten, have you?" Olivia sighed. "Why do you keep doing this?" Nathan stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "Because I care about you, and I'll keep doing this until you realize you care about me too." She thought she could keep resisting, but then on a rainy night, Nathan called, "Come downstairs." Looking out the window, she saw him standing in the rain, umbrella in hand, waiting. When she reached him, Nathan gently touched her cheek, his voice soft but firm. "Give me a chance." Olivia had fought this long enough. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, strong, unwavering, just like him. She let out a breath she didn't even realize she had been holding. "All right, Nathan," she whispered. "You win." Nathan's smile grew as he pulled her closer. "You won't regret it." And this time Olivia knew she wouldn't run away. 1 year later, Olivia stood on the rooftop of Sterling Dynamics, the night breeze brushing against her skin, carrying the distant hum of the city below. She didn't understand why Nathan had called her up here on a Saturday night, but the moment she stepped onto the helipad, her breath caught. The city lights stretched endlessly beneath her, sparkling like a universe turned upside down. A narrow path, scattered with rose petals, led straight to where Nathan was standing. Dressed in a sleek black suit, his hair slightly tousled from the wind, his gaze unchanged, still looking at her the same way. Olivia let out a small laugh, crossing her arms. "Nathan, what are you up to now?" He stepped closer, took her hands in his, and pulled her gently toward him. "Something I've been thinking about for a long time." Her heartbeat pounded. "Olivia," his voice was deep, steady. "Since the day you walked into my life, I haven't had a single, boring moment." She laughed softly, but her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I used to believe I had control over everything, but then you showed up and I realized I don't want control anymore." Nathan slowly lowered himself to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. A ring gleamed under the city lights. "Olivia Carter," Nathan's voice was steady, but his hands trembled ever so slightly. "I've built empires, closed impossible deals, and led thousands of people, but nothing has ever terrified me more than this moment." He took a deep breath, eyes locked onto hers. "Would you do me the honor of making sure I never win another argument for the rest of my life?" Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. No hesitation, no doubt. Yes. Nathan smiled, slipping the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss. Deep, passionate, and filled with everything he couldn't say in words. Behind them, fireworks exploded, painting the sky in brilliant colors. But Olivia saw only one thing: the man in front of her, the man she never thought she'd love, the man she couldn't imagine living without. 3 months later, "Are you nervous?" Nathan leaned in, whispering as Olivia stood at the end of the aisle, her wedding dress making her look like a literal goddess from a fairy tale. Olivia swallowed hard, gripping her bouquet. "No, I'm fine," she said, but her voice was absolutely not fine. Nathan smirked. "Good, because you're about to marry the man you once ordered around like a clueless intern." Olivia stomped on his foot. "Can you not bring that up on our wedding day?" Nathan chuckled. "Not a chance." The ceremony was perfect, and everyone could feel the chaotic but undeniable love between them. When it was time for their vows, Olivia tried to keep a straight face. "Nathan Sterling, you are the most infuriating man I have ever met, but somehow you're also the only one I can't live without. I promise to love you, take care of you, even when you constantly annoy me." Nathan grinned, squeezing her hands. "Olivia Carter, you are the first woman to ever boss me around like an IT guy, and somehow I fell in love with that. So I promise to love you, even when you keep ordering me around every single day." 3 months after the wedding, Nathan sat on the couch, casually reading the newspaper. Olivia walked into the kitchen, arms crossed, one eyebrow raised. "Hey, darling husband, get me a coffee." Nathan peeked over his newspaper. "Oh, another order. Let me guess. You forgot that you're not my boss anymore, didn't you?" Olivia narrowed her eyes. "Do you want to survive today?" Nathan closed the newspaper, pretending to think. "You know, since we got married, I've realized something." "What?" Olivia crossed her arms, suspicious. Nathan grinned mischievously. "I am no longer the CEO of Sterling Dynamics. I am officially an intern for Olivia Sterling." Olivia laughed, flipping her hair dramatically. "Took you long enough to figure it out?" Nathan sighed dramatically, standing up to pour her coffee. "How did I end up marrying such a terrifying woman?" Olivia took the coffee, sipping it like a queen. "Because you like it." Nathan leaned closer, smirking. "Like, oh no, darling." He reached for her hand dramatically. "I am utterly, hopelessly, tragically in love with my terrifying wife." Olivia rolled her eyes, laughing as she swatted his arm. And before Olivia could respond, Nathan pulled her into a kiss. Just to remind her that no matter who was in charge at home, they were always a team. Life with Olivia and Nathan was never boring. They could argue over who should do the dishes. Nathan could tease Olivia every day about how she once ordered him around, but behind every playful jab was an unshakable love. One evening, Olivia curled up on the couch, watching a movie with a bowl of popcorn in her lap. Nathan glanced at her, then narrowed his eyes. She realized something. Olivia glanced over. "What?" Nathan smirked. "You don't order me around anymore." Olivia shrugged. "That's because I don't need to. You already do everything I want automatically." Nathan burst out laughing. "I married an evil genius." Olivia grinned victoriously, and Nathan pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "And I love it. What started as a ridiculous misunderstanding ended in a love no one could replace." So, what do you think about Olivia and Nathan's story? If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment, rate it from 0 to 10, and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another amazing story. And if you made it this far, comment "Bossy Love" to see how many people adore this story. Thank you for being here. See you in the next story.